My name's Dennis Moroney. I am a food producer. I raise cattle and sheep on a 25,000 acre ranch located in the north end of the Mule Mountains in Cochise County, Arizona, approximately 18 miles from the border with Mexico. We shear sheep because they grow so much wool in a year that is considered an annual crop. And we shear once a year, usually after the coldest months of winter and before the weather gets really hot. So it'll be early spring. First couple weeks in March is pretty normal. Occasionally we'll be later than that, but we try to shear the sheep before they lamb, and that way we can tell which sheep are pregnant and things like that. We have two professional shearers that we've used in the past. I have to say that finding anybody that shears sheep professionally anymore in the U.S. is getting more and more difficult every year. These are two young guys, Jerry Ladd and Mick Hoffman. Mick is, he actually lives in Arizona outside of Phoenix, and he spends about 6 months a year shearing in Arizona and then travels to Australia and spends another 5 months or so shearing in Australia. Jerry started shearing in Washington, and he's been shearing I think about 20 years, and he recently, because of his wife's work, relocated to Illinois. So he actually flew here from Illinois to participate in the shearing, and we went through somewhere around 220 head of sheep in 2 days. So pretty efficient shearing operation. We had lots of good help from friends and family and so forth. If everything goes right, they can have a sheep completely shorn in 5 minutes. Sometimes they'll have to change blades between sheep because the blades get gummed up with the wool has a type of oil in it called lanolin. It's a pretty heavy-bodied oil, and if there's dust and debris in the wool, it sticks together and the blades get kind of gummed up. So, you know, you could, we didn't really time this, but you probably look at a running average of 10 minutes per sheep all day long. And these guys, they don't take breaks, and except for lunch, they just keep going. The fleeces are skirted, which means we take the shorn pelt, which pretty much holds together because the wool kind of is interlocked with other wool fibers. We lay it out on a table with a screen top and go all around the edge and pull off, we call them tags. It's places where there might be manure clumped in the wool, or there might be vegetative matter, stems from weeds and stuff like that, thorns, sometimes mud or a little wax, that is from the lanolin. We try to get as much of that out of the fleeces as possible. We quickly examine the fiber quality and note the color, and then we bag the fleeces, usually 2 fleeces per bag. So black fleeces in a separate bag, white fleeces, gray fleeces, tan fleeces. So they're color separated, and any notes from that particular sheep are recorded on so we have a clipboard. We're putting every sheep's ear tag number, and we'll make a note that maybe this sheep that has some undesirable wool quality, so we're going to cull that sheep, or maybe that there's something that we need to make that requires further attention for that particular sheep. And then those bags are all put in a pile, and we'll later go back through and sort that wool and remove the wool from the plastic bags and put them in giant burlap bags that we then haul to a mill. We'll be going this year to a mill in Wyoming. We're going to try a different mill because they seem to have some technology that will be useful to turn the lower quality end of our wool into insulation. So we're going to have a new product. There's a lot of preparation beforehand to set up, because we only shear once a year, but we use these facilities to do all kinds of other things. So we might be working cattle in the corrals next week, and before that we might be shoeing horses, and before that we've got, you know, something going on with the dogs or chickens or whatever. So setting up the facility to make the flow of sheep more efficient is a big challenge. So we have to have holding pens, we have to have a little crowding area where you can take a portion of the sheep and put them into a smaller space, and then be able to get them and move them into the barn in maybe 8 or 10 head at a time, and then they could be caught individually to be passed to the shearer. And then on the other end, dealing with all the wool. So you have to have a plan that anticipates anything that might go wrong. Because we're an off-grid facility, we're dependent on solar energy. So we have to be very careful about our power use. We have 2 electric shearers running significant size electric motors all day long, plus overhead lights for lighting the area, plus all the background use of freezers and refrigerators and water pumps and all the things that are part of the ranch infrastructure. So it's important to monitor the power use to make sure that we have enough power to keep shearing without running out. And of course, if it's overcast, that gets kind of challenging. But and then, you know, just the transportation. We made 6 trailer loads to haul the sheep here from where they had been grazing, and trying to make sure that we don't separate mothers from babies and, you know, all that. So a good full week of activity that, you know, for us, all the meal preparation in advance to feed the crew. The first day of shearing, I would guess that we fed 20 people or so. And so it's a lot of work, but it's kind of fun because everybody stays happy. And Mick is a little bit younger than Jerry, and he brought his phone loaded with some really upbeat contemporary music, and everybody was kind of dancing around and really. So we're doing our work, but we had the beat to keep us going, and I think it was a very happy couple of days. There's a scale, a sliding scale, in terms of sheep breeds and the amount of wool and the quality of the wool, and certain specific characteristics of the wool. So on one end of the spectrum, there are sheep called hair sheep that produce very little wool, and what wool they do produce, they shed off. So there's no shearing required for those kinds of sheep. On the other hand, with those you get no second product, which is wool. On the other end of the spectrum would be the fine wool breeds. Typically they are all white and super fine wool, and they will shear 12 to 18 pounds of wool. Our sheep are probably producing half that. So they're not large bodied sheep, and they're not abundant wool producers. They're more of a desert sheep. But at the same time, the quality of the wool that they do produce is very unique and very desirable among certain people who work with wool. It's excellent weaving wool. It's, of course, the wool that Navajo people have been making world famous Navajo rugs from for a long, long time. The wool felts very well, so it's very desirable for felted wool products like hats and clogs and booties and bags and things like that. It makes excellent saddle blankets. And, I have wool goods, wool hats and sweaters and so forth made of churro wool that are from all natural wool. We have 5 different colors of wool that come from our sheep. So we have a kind of colorful flock compared to people that raise merino type sheep that are all white.